meeting of the Recreation and Cultural Services Commission. I will call it to order at 6:30 p.m. Carolina, could you do the roll call, please?
Commissioners Rosa,
Present.
Steen,
Present.
Weiskirch,
Present.
Nguyen,
Present.
and Wright.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Carolina. Next on the agenda is the moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next on the agenda is communications from the floor. So does anybody on the floor have anything that's not already on the agenda that they would like to comment on? Going once, going twice. Yay. Okay, then moving on to the next thing is other action items. So Drea is going to get us started on this presentation to approve the schematic design for the inclusive playground at the city park at the Dunes.
So basically, I just wanted to make sure that all of you know that in your packet here is the schematic design that Leathers and Associates will present tonight. And then also you have the design highlights, which is the backup to the lead designer Jim's summary of the schematic design. And then you have a copy of the presentation. So you can follow that as we let them go ahead and start their presentation. And I'd like to introduce Bo and Ava and Vivian and Jim from Leathers and Associates.
Good evening.
Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, a pleasure, a pleasure. Dre, thank you. Appreciate all of your help in facilitating this and coordinating it. Before we begin, I'd like to preface this and let the committee know this is a first draft. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to get things on paper, take a look at it in the space, and then come to you and get your feedback as a committee. And understand that while this is going on, we too, in Jim and Ava, actually our entire team are also, once we put it to paper, looked at it and went, we have some other ideas as well, but we don't want to do that until we have the feedback from the committee. So I hope that that's clear, a clarification. And any questions? And I guess what I'll do is I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jim to kind of lead us through the playground, through the presentation. Bo, if you can pull up, I think we're going to share your screen.
Yep.
And are there any questions before we begin while Bo is doing this? No? Well, it's nice to see you all.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Yes, we can see your screen. Go ahead, Bo.
Okay. So that's our first page. Okay, I'll let you get started, Jim, and I'll just go through it as you need to.
Okay. Well, of course, we've already had a team out there talking to the community, talking to the kids, and Vivian and Ava came back and went through some thoughts with me as far as the feel that the playground might take. It helps. I have been to your area. It's just been a few years, and from there we tried to develop a design that reflects that has a lot of play value and also reflects the area and hopefully the types of play that you're looking for. That's what we're still trying to get a handle on. I haven't seen this PowerPoint, so I had to be out this afternoon, so I'm running a little bit blind here. But let's see what's next.
Yep.
Okay, these are again, these are some of the things that that we were looking at. You have lighthouses. You have you have, of course, the bay. The Monterey Bay is something that I have pretty much every nature documentary on the ocean that I've seen includes a segment on Monterey Bay. So that's something that we're really trying to emphasize. Next.
Next one.
Now we're getting a little bit into some of the types of pieces that that are included, and again, this is we're still working out the details of this, but this will give you these are pretty self-explanatory, but these will give you some a visual of some of the types of equipment, the spider bouncer, disc swings, monkey bars, rocks, twisty tube slide. Next. Wheelchair swing, a rather tightly cropped shot, about the only one we seem to have of 7-foot veer slides, tunnels, piece. There are a couple of things that you in the design that may not be immediately apparent. One is the expression swing. It's a particular model of a parent-child swing that actually, I believe this was the company that invented the type of swing, which allows parents to swing with their toddler, or in the 512 lot, there's a therapeutic seat that accommodates older kids. An example of one of multiple nets that are in your project. Next. And this sort of indicates some of the locations that that these go in. From here, I can give people sort of a tour of the playground. When I used to come out and speak to the community myself, I would frequently sort of do a tour, because this is still a 2D drawing and it takes a certain amount of imagination. And I guess the question is, do people feel like they would like me to take them through the playground at this point?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Well, the basic footprint is something that we worked out some months ago, and as per discussion with now I'm going to blank on the name of your new firm. Bo, can you help me?
Wallace,
Wallace, thank you. I lose words occasionally. I've made a few slight adjustments, and I'll get into them in a moment. One of the things that we'll be doing going forward is doing some back and forth with Wallace in terms of how our space and the spaces outside work together and how they synergize. With that in mind, there is of course a main sort of entry plaza, and that's that has 3 ways in: one from the north lot and one from the west lot, which is up the hill and requires the switchback there. And this, as a transitional area, I was imagining this as something that we would work in concert with you and the Wallace Group to develop. It's not necessarily part of our scope as currently designed, but we'll see how that goes going forward. It is present. I am presently planning it as fenced. One of the things that we tend to do with these projects, that's honestly one of the preferred features, is one way in, one way out. And this means that, particularly on a very large playground, that the kids can be running around, and the parents can know that if they position themselves near the entry, they can know that their child is if they're not immediately in sight at all times, has not left the playground without them. There was some discussion with the last meeting we had with Wallace Group about opening the space up so that children could get out into the picnic area that is down near the wheelchair swing, which was originally planned to be accessible from the sidewalk, and the grassy area and treat area that's to the south and to the east. And so with that in mind, what I've presently done is the playground, the entryway is fenced. The playground is fenced except from basically about that, what we call the tot lot, near that climbing rock. Yep, thank you, Bo. You're the one with the cursor. Across to the wheelchair swing, and and as anticipated, the picnic tables would the picnic area would then become contiguous with the playground. And again, the design that I have in there is completely theoretical. How that space is handled would be dealt with by the Wallace Group. I did what I've shown should fit the existing topography as the other site did. The area, what this would involve is that basically the area from over near the spider bouncer back along the sidewalk and looping back around toward the whale would be probably a different fencing product. Ours is really designed for level use, and as I discussed in an email, wouldn't follow a grade terribly gracefully. So that's something that we'll want to discuss and work with. But the intention now is that the playground is still one way in, one way out, but that the fenced area has been expanded to include grass, picnic table, and trees. Getting back to the playground tour, what I proposed for the entryway, for the entry plaza, is basically a sort of an ante-area with some types of activities. Picnic tables are a possibility. A lot of children asked for a gaga ball pit. And that's something that I presently put in. This is better suited outside the playground than within. And a sensory garden, which is something that was discussed. And as I understand it, there are people on hand that would be able to help us with this. We've done this before. You may be familiar with the sensory garden in Tatum's Garden. The advantage, I think, to putting it in this location would be that because the exterior surfacing would likely be concrete, we could probably go with a lower curb than is present in Tatum's Garden, and possibly I suggested an entry or an area that people could get into the garden, and the purpose would be to increase the ability of children to interact with the plants there. From there, we then narrow down to a single entry point where Bo's cursor is, and that would bring us into the playground proper. This would be where we would transition to safety surfacing, and the things that you would see immediately in are a couple of seesaws, which are nice. This is a nice 212 feature. And I put it right outside the tot lot so that it could be used by children of any age. And to the right, a zip cruise, which is a long sort of a cross between a zip line and a track ride. It has what I've presently done is use a 50-foot zip cruise, which is longer than we typically put in. You had the space, and it's a popular feature, and if possible, I think people would enjoy the longer length. The triple is something that we just did in a project down in Texas, and what this allows is you would have with a triple, you would have two regular lanes, which are basically a disc on a cable, which children sit on and can launch off the platforms and skate across to the other side, back and forth. And a third lane, which would have a therapeutic seat, which is which is a back seat with a harness that's usable by children that have mobility issues or upper body strength issues or anxiety issues. And this is, as much as I love our built playground, I have to say this is one of the most popular things that we include. Now I'll get back to the tot lot. The tot lot is entrance is off to the off to your right as left as you enter. I've always been bad at that. But the biggest focus coming in and what you would see first, well, there's a wayfinding station which would provide information for parents and children in how to navigate around the playground, what's where, which again, for a playground that's over 30,000 square feet is, I think, a useful thing. And once you head in, then we're trying to start to give a feeling of the bay and aquatic themes. I started with a boat with a swaying platform in it. It's a popular feature. I tend to like using a boat because it really reflects the experience of the deck, which is a gentle sway. It's one of our favorite pieces. It can be rolled onto by a child in a wheelchair or people of any ability, and it intended to create the sensation of being on the water. And it's connected by a cable bridge to what I'm calling the monkey. I think I can just about see it. The monkey bar obstacle course, which is a request of the kids. You've got an entire sequence, so kids that have better upper body strength than I ever did can go around as much as they want. It's a variety of different types. Conventional monkey bars, a monkey bar that's wavier that goes up and down, and a ring bridge, and a snake type. There are a few other possibilities if we want to discuss that. And both the ring bridge and the conventional monkey bars come in a high-low configuration, so that children in wheelchairs or walkers or who are short like I was can participate. That, along with the parallel bars, which is a lower feature. That's one that you would support yourself with your arms below you. It provides different levels of challenge, for different levels of ability, and it's one example that we like to do with side-by-side play. From there, we're getting into the main structure, which is
Jim, just a quick comment since you're in this area.
okay.
For the giant triple zip line area, it would be helpful to see what the view is when they're on there. So there's basically a fence on the top, right? I think that's a great opportunity to maybe install some artwork, so that when they zip line, they can look at that, and it's kind of like, hey, we're zipping through this certain,
Ooh,
that's
a good
flowers and
idea. I
things
like
like that.
that.
And then the other comment I had was I'm looking at all the animals you have and the inspiration, and it's mostly Monterey and things like that. So I would suggest maybe have the snowy plover in there, because that's the animal that's the City of Marina animal.
Okay.
And then also flowers and plants that are sort of, like the poppy that we have a lot around here.
Okay.
And a little bit more Marina, City of Marina related. I see the other inspirations, it's Monterey, and it's all great and fine, but because this is located in Marina, I would like to see more of our city in here.
Okay, that's fine. This is a big debate that I had when I was working on themes, and if there are things that we can incorporate, and these are some that had been shared with me, and they don't. The artistic stuff doesn't usually show up that clearly at this point, but we could definitely, if there are thoughts for add this as opposed to that, this is the time when we could definitely do that.
I believe that our plan was to focus on flora and fauna that was unique to Marina. I believe your mayor is a botanist in the past, so we had we had considered reaching out to him to ask him for some guidance. But one of the things that we were quite taken with on our visit out there was how beautiful your wildflowers are, and we felt that was a very important part that we wanted to incorporate. But as Jim said, this is just sort of the skeleton, if you will. And the fact that you mentioned the snowy plover is wonderful, and this is why we want to hear from you. So thank you for those comments.
I would like to say one more thing. I
Please.
would appreciate it if everybody held all their comments to the end so we can get through the briefing first. Thanks.
Super.
Okay, I'll try to move along. I can become over focused on details. From there, what I proposing basically is to the low the low ramp section intended to bring the children up into the structure would reflect basically a tide pool, and this is an example of a place where it would probably be heavily dependent upon art, and I have to think about the environment that a snowy plover lives in. I think they're more dune related. I'll have to
Yes.
look into that, but that would be fairly heavily flora and fauna, well, fauna related, and anticipating there's the potential for seals. There's the potential for I think the otters will probably be over toward the kelp, would be my guess. In terms of what you were saying, yes, I debated the question of what to do with a aquarium-like theme there. It's a nice theme. We don't have to go that route. I wasn't proposing to try to make it a replica, but in many ways just a representation of the water that you have at your back door. Let's see. Now I have to think for a second here. Once you're around the ramps, which partway around the ramps, there's a net circuit, and heading in the other direction, a lighthouse that I'm told is visible from your area. I believe that's Pigeon Point. Is that, Ava? And to the back, is what I'm anticipating right now is the as a quiet area. I'm still looking for other opportunities for quiet. It's always an interesting dilemma creating a space that's tucked, but those are all relatively highish decks. There are areas under the decks that some children will are likely to occupy. And one of the things that we've been trying to do lately is incorporate what I would call a hammock net, which is basically a sort of a stimming activity for not just for children on the autism spectrum, but particularly for them, that they can lie in and bounce. It's also an opportunity to participate adjacent to the nets if you're not able to climb. From there, we're getting up. We've got a ramp circuit that brings us back around, and the aquarium area is basically a 3-story area. There's ground level elements, mid-level decks, and high-level decks with what is presently an 8-foot twisty tube slide on it. That's actually accessible from the. That's actually a ramp accessible feature. And then from there, a set of playhouses, which, and this is here's a question. This is the form is based somewhat on Cannery Row, but there's no particular reason why the playhouses need to take that form. They can take whatever form we want. A lot of kids were asking for a taco shop, so I'm anticipating that would be in there. The playhouses are served by by a ramped high deck, by about a little over 7 feet up, and the deck actually provides essentially a second floor with play spaces at that level and underneath. There's a quadruple set of slides, veer and snake slides that I think we can trick out as a sort of, I've called them a giant squid slide. And one thing in terms of flora and fauna and the dunes is that they're borrowed from the bridge down near Big Sur, that long catwalk below the slides could essentially be a bridge crossing between two sets of high dunes. These would have rock walls on them, and these would suggest climbing on the dunes, a likely candidate for considerable flora and fauna. Then coming back around, we're getting out into the bay, and I'm been experimenting with something I'm calling a kelp climber, which is essentially a variety of different climbing options tricked out with kelp, space underneath that would feel like you were under the water, and the idea is basically to give children the feeling that they're climbing through a kelp forest. This would be adjacent at present to our to one of the manufactured pieces, which is a pretty good sized humpback whale, and that's those pieces. I appreciate Ava finding that one. That was a great piece. Beyond that, then there are sets of swings all the way over. I will note that the side behind the swings is fenced, although there's access to the grassy area over where those couple of pictures are, where the disc swing picture is. And the reason for that is to encourage children to basically exit below the swings and not try to cross the swings. The safety regs specify that keeping the swings in a cul-de-sac so that you don't get cross traffic because they've got a lot of movement. This is also the area that we have a wheelchair swing in. It's a specialized feature, and for safety reasons, it's in its own enclosure. It's something we tend to include in accessible projects if we can, because it provides children who otherwise have never gotten the opportunity to swing to do so. A quick check-in with the tot lot, which I based on the I think it's Pena's Point lighthouse as a structure. The picture gives a pretty good indication of what I'm looking for. That's proposing 2 to 3 slides there. The spider bouncer, which is sort of like a trampoline. It won't launch your kids into space, but it gives kids the experience of a trampoline without without too excessive amounts of movement. An overhead circuit, which suggests a climber, and a wavy bridge, which are intended to suggest dunes. And then a return swing through a tunnel, which I have not presently themed, but potential has the potential for a few possibilities. That's something we'll be discussing. Beyond that, there are various other features. There's a music area. I made a tentative selection of musical instruments, but that's open to discussion. I have not specifically made decisions about sensory panels. One of our suppliers has a bunch of new options I want to look into. There's a couple of climbing rocks. You can see a picture of the arched one there. There's a zero barrier entry merry-go-round, like the one in Tatum's Treehouse, which kids of all abilities can use. And there are various little, what I call Heidi huts, which are small playhouses that children with anxiety can can retreat into when they if they're feeling overstimulated. And that's a pretty good but slightly basic view. I left out an undersea tunnel that's to the back of the aquarium area, and a few other things. Spinning several different types of stand-up spinners in addition to the merry-go-round, and like I said, expression swings of different types in both lots. And that gives a pretty good feel. I'll at this point, if people have questions or comments, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you so much, Jim. First, we're going to open up the questions and comments to the floor. So anybody out there who has anything, please come up to that microphone and state your name for the record, and let us know what you.
Hi, I'm Amanda Hayes. I'm the accessibility chair. And I just had a question if everything like the Heidi huts, the tunnels were going to be large enough to be adult accessible in case there's a child who runs, who elopes, who likes to go through those things, who needs a one-on-one with them. If basically everything could accommodate a child and an adult in movement.
I think generally speaking, yes, and that's one of the things that we're always looking for, is to have an easy way up and down in all situations. There is actually one location that the lighthouse does not presently have an easy way up, but I would definitely consider adding that. The Heidi huts are a little bit smaller for children looking for an enclosed space. They're large enough for as currently designed for an adult to get into, but not to go in and necessarily stand in. Depending on what you're interested in, that's an easy adjustment to make. It's
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hi, Tess Shireflea, childcare chair. And I had two questions. So the first was in the tot lot, I don't notice a playhouse space. Is it not? I wanted to ask if there's a playhouse space.
It as presently designed, there is a ground level playhouse area as part of the lighthouse. Yeah, right up at the top there, Bo. There's a ramp entry at the highest point, and then the lighthouse tower, and in between there is a ground level space large enough to accommodate a wheelchair and a 60-degree turning circle, and that's how I approached that. It is easy enough to add a standalone playhouse if there is interest in that.
Yeah, just thinking about the kids that are around that age, that kind of like sociodramatic play might be beneficial for them. And
Okay.
then also for children with, developmental needs that might aim more towards the younger space. It might be nice for them to still have access to that kind of, make-believe play opportunity. And then my second question was, I love the zip line. I wonder, with it being so close to the tot lot, I wonder about children wandering in the line of the zip line, like small children. I think the boat being next to the tot lot makes a lot of sense because I can see young kids and older kids kind of co-playing on that together, like maybe swaying together. But the zip line, I know, for example, there's a park near us that has a zip line, and I'm constantly having to go swipe someone out from in front of the zip line. So I just wonder, for reasons why the swings are all at the back, if the zip line might be a similar feature that we might want to consider separating slightly from the tot lot.
Okay, there's always so many trade-offs here. This occurred to me too, and let me give that some thought. I tried to get it at least to one side, but yes, one of the reasons for the tot lot entry to be close to the front is so that children can head there easily without being distracted or or enticed into another area. So let me give that some thought. It's a it's a tricky thing to move, but but I take your point. As a curiosity, what is can you tell me anything about the zip line that you've got? My general experience with this one has been it does have some movement, but one of the things that I like about this particular manufacturer is it moves across, but it's not one of the ones that I would consider terrifying. So I'm always interested in hearing what
Yeah,
types
well,
of
the zip line I'm
experiences people
thinking
have
of
had.
is in the dunes, if anybody else has been there. But it has kind of like a sand bar underneath it. And so that's always a little bit of a challenge too, right? Because some kids like to play in the sand and then the zip
Ooh.
line's going through.
No,
So
no
there's kind of a
sand here.
natural, yeah, so there's like a
Okay.
natural issue there a little bit. But I'm just thinking also just, walking right in, that could be very appealing to kids right away. But like I said, I mean, I don't think it's impossible to keep a younger child from going over there, but also though in a chaotic environment, right? It could be someone that wanders that's potentially in the line of, yeah.
No,
Or
like I
the
said,
boat
this
could
is
be closer.
this is one of the things that I debated rather heartily. One, lacking other options, one possibility is to look at having a barrier system in that I would I mean, one could run a fence across on that side, but another option in terms of just running would be a set of backless benches. We've used that in some situations to filter kids. That will keep kids from running across unknowingly. It doesn't prevent them from going, "Mom, I want to go on that."
Yeah, or potentially I wonder if like a sensory panel dividing the spaces could work well also, because then it would be right at the front.
That's
And
an
then
interesting
toddlers would really
idea,
enjoy touching
actually.
that right away. Yeah, I know at like
Right.
Tatum's Garden, that mosaic that has all of the fruits and vegetables, I know that's a popular thing for my kids to touch and
Okay.
feel. So perhaps that could be interesting enough that the older children could see the zip line and know to go around, but the younger kiddos could get distracted by the sensory space. Thank you.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. Let me at this point I haven't worked out the details of the sensory area, and particularly for a more active sensory area, we'd likely have one that was largely tactile and visual, and one for children that get overstimulated, and one that's more active that might produce some noise for the children that like noise stimulation, and near the zip line is a louder location than some of the other places I'd considered. So okay.
Hi, I'm Mike Moeller. I'm the volunteer chair. To kind of build on Commissioner Wynn's comments about items in here that represent the peninsula as a whole, but not Marina. I mean, I can understand that's hard to do. I mean, everybody else, you have Pinot Point and the cannery and whatnot. Marina doesn't have a lot of things like that. We're the city of Marina, but we don't have a marina. But we were originally when Marina was established by William Block Patton and somewhere around 1915, we were a flag stop. So we do have train history. I mean, the Monterey branch line does still run through Marina. In fact, there is a train history museum that runs hand carts on a tour for now, unfortunately. So I would like to see some sort of replica or some sort of climbing structure train of some sort integrated in here if you want to represent something that can latch on to what little kind of things that Marina has.
Okay.
I mean, that's just a recommendation. Other than that, great job.
That sounds fine. I apologize for the fact that I was not able to come out. So I've got Ava and Vivian did their best to explain these things to me, but sometimes things get by me. So
Yeah, hey, no
one of
worries.
the things that I'm always aware of is that the children will sometimes ask for trains or go-karts, and the one thing that we can't do is have ones that actually move. So one of the decisions I have to make is what are they asking for? But I was not clear enough about the history on that, and I apologize.
Oh, that's all right. That's why we're here. That's
Appreciate
all.
that.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Sharon Langmead. I'm working with the Accessibility Committee, and I wanted to address the access to the grassy area and the picnic area. Whether that it sounded almost like that was totally open. And
Sorry, go ahead.
as a mother who has raised an eloper and who is now teaching elopers, that child is now teaching elopers, we are more sensitive to having an area that's that open and having children that disappear in seconds and not minutes. If there is some kind of gate there, and maybe even a double gate like they have in dog parks, where you could corral those kids before they escape, if you will.
Okay. The opening into the grassy area is something that was discussed in a recent meeting, and it's I don't think it's been finalized, so that's helpful for helping to decide how we're approaching that. It is I'm appreciative of, I was a bit of an eloper myself, and I'm appreciative of the issue, particularly with a large scale playground. If there are ways of handling that. We're using sort of an ante room at the entrance, which is intended to, that entry plaza, because of the nature of access to the bathroom and to the two lots, has three entrances, which is why we narrowed it down at the entry, so that there is a single intercept point out there. And there are a few possibilities. We don't necessarily have to leave the area from the tot lot across to the merry-go-round as open. We could return that to fencing, and what the access is through the picnic area would technically be possible to fence the picnic area. And the question basically becomes access versus security, and this is always a question of balancing what people are looking for. I'm a security person myself, so I appreciate your feedback.
Great, thank you.
I have two more, kind of going off of theirs.
All right, go ahead.
Amanda Hayes again. I was going to kind of piggyback off of both of these ladies. Visible boundary line was going to be one of my questions. Love the idea of a backless bench, something not too obvious for kids who kind of will just go. My question was about the fencing area. Have you finalized what the height might be and what type of latches or closures will be available?
In terms of height, our default is to meet the ASTM fencing standard, which basically establishes, and I'm trying to remember it off. We use basically 47 inches from the highest foothold to the top rail of the bench. That's our standard. We have had projects that Orem, Utah was one that specifically requested a 6-foot fence, and that is an option. It's not something we automatically go to unless we have a request for it. So I would be interested in knowing what the considerations you have for for how unclimbable you need it to be to make that decision.
Pretty
Um,
unclimbable. I have a climber myself. He just climbed our 9-foot fence at our house. Yeah. Something else too with the fences. Oh, sorry, the closure, the latch closure.
Oh, I'm
Is
sorry.
that something? No, that's okay.
Um, traditionally, we have gone with an open entryway, but there are, and I don't know if we would do a gate at the main entrance. It's something I'd have to discuss with my boss. There are reasons for it. We need to be careful not to create a crush and shear risk, but it is something we have had playgrounds that specifically look for that. So I can't tell you right off the top of my head that a gate at the main entrance is something that we could definitely do, but let's have a discussion about that and see what we can best do. The other option, and this is definitely possible. I have in some situations used tried to turn the main entry into a little bit more of an obstacle course. Sometimes with a smaller ante area, if you created say a gated area here, you offset the gates, you're looking to try to at least slow the kids down so that they can't bolt out this way, but they have to work their way through. Are you in contact with the Parks Commission? Is this a discussion that we can involve you in?
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
a little confused. We are the Parks Commission.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm not sure whether everyone's parks or if there are members of the public there. Okay. In that case, yes. Let's have let's see what we can work out. It's something I need to discuss with my boss, and we would like to work out a solution that makes you happy. We just need to figure out what tools are in our what we're prepared to do.
Jim, everyone here who's spoken tonight is on the steering committee. So
Okay.
all of their ideas, we're going to be able to talk through them, and then whatever feedback you give, we'll be able to go forward with
Okay.
updating the steering committee.
Apologies.
And we're going to continue to receive feedback and everything. Yeah, thanks.
I just had one last question. It wasn't mentioned here, so I'm not sure if the schematics have been talked about even yet, but bathrooms, is that something that has been talked about, or is that a later issue?
No, that's outside our scope, but it is
Okay.
It's currently planned for. It's just hiding behind the Pena's Point lighthouse. You can see a rectangle peeking out the bottom. This is ultimately why there are 3 entry points in the outer plaza, one accommodating that upper lot, which I think for traffic purposes is where a lot of children with and families with mobility issues may decide to park, because to avoid conflicts with the recway. The main entrance, which is also certainly also an option for parking. And then one of the things that I'm always most interested in, one of the things that determines the tot lot is that I've tried to get as easy a run from the tot lot and the playground as a whole to the bathroom as possible.
Because I just
So-
had some suggestions for incontinence issues with older kids.
Mhm.
I know changing stations are available for babies and toddlers, but there are 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds that do need changing.
Mhm.
And so just like suggesting having bigger areas, bigger stalls, even possibly vending machines for wipes, diapers in case that's forgotten, bags for soiled clothes, things like that to accommodate sometimes like an older child that might need assistance changing.
Okay. This is, like I said, this is basically out of our scope. So I know I've seen the plan that was prepared by Verde and is going to be updated by Wallace. Has a bathroom in there. I haven't looked closely. These are things that crossed my mind too, and I haven't looked closely at it. This is definitely a discussion that you would want to have with Wallace Group. And I will mention in passing that as per their request, I tried to realign the fence line in that area to open up a little more space. Some of the back and forth would be making sure you have an adequate bathroom in that area. And if we need to make further adjustments, that's certainly an option.
Wonderful. It looks great. Thank you.
All right, I'm now going to move the comments to the commissioners. If you have anything, go ahead.
I have a bunch of questions. One is related, how are you dealing with the wind, both as a windbreak and also as a feature in the park, given that the environment here is windy all the time, unlike in Tatum's garden or in the treehouse?
That's one of the things that we need to address further in development. But my intention is that is to look for windbreak opportunities within the structures that we've got. The playhouses obviously will provide a substantial amount of shelter, having play facades. The rock walls will as well, and there's basically a balancing act there in terms of trying to break the wind and not impede visibility too much. But my assumption is that we would be looking for systems within there. In some cases, if this will work, I did this on a project in Minnesota where they had very cold wind, where we used gapped facade that allows some sight lines, but still breaks up the wind. It's a discussion I would very much like to have going forward in terms of how we can best incorporate it. But I see a lot of opportunities in terms of the existing structure to create windbreaks.
Similarly, I have questions about the moisture. Again, we're very foggy and wet. And so how are the areas in the playground going to be sufficiently protected so that kids can use them without needing to wipe it down all the time, which is what happens at many of our parks currently?
That's a challenging question. The materials we use are unlike the days when we used wood, are very moisture durable and generally not a big issue with being slippery. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what how we would address is it that they get wet? Is it that they develop sedimentation from things coming in with the wind and the rain?
No, I think it's mostly, my concern is that there are enough areas that are sheltered so that even on our foggiest day, the playground can be used. Because on our foggy days when everything's wet, nobody wants to, I mean, it's no fun to have a wet butt from riding down a wet slide. So we need enough areas that are sheltered enough so that kids can still use them even when it's really wet.
Okay, well, there's a certain amount of that in here. I would have to think about whether we've got enough. There are presently not a lot of roofs in here, although, as I said, the playhouses all have decking overhead, so they effectively have a roof. But one of the reasons that I didn't include a lot of roofs at this point was that the message that I had was that shade was not considered a really big issue. This is the first I'm hearing of this, and and I gonna need some, I'm gonna need to give that some thought, but I think there are ways that we could approach it. There's a fair amount here that that does provide that, but we should probably try to improve it and group it. My boss and I were discussing a particular variation on a central structure today that might be well suited to that sort of thing in terms of creating creating some micro areas. And let me think about that.
I would also suggest moving the Gaga pit further in adjacent to the tot area, because the Gaga pit really requires several kids to be playing in there. When it's not being used, it can also serve to help corral the little kids in kind of an open area in a spot, but where it is currently in the schematic is too far away from that. So I think you can get better usage of the Gaga pit, not just as a Gaga pit, but as someplace where you can, let your kid roam around in a walled off area that's much smaller than the open playground. So I would want to move that in instead of leaving it out where it is currently.
Okay.
And then in addition, I also want to think about the floor surface. I know that you said it was safety areas, but I would encourage areas that involve like little moguls so that even kids in wheelchairs can have that kind of multi-sensory experience just with the flooring. Not in a crazy way, but in a gentle way to experience the running up and down of hills as part of the park. I think is important to consider that aspect, not just what's on top of it, but the actual surface itself.
So are you talking about grade, or are you talking about texture? I'm not sure if I don't know if I'm
Yes, both of those. Both of those.
Okay.
If you've been to a playground with little kids, they will enjoy running up and down the hills. And I think we can create something here that is inclusive, that allows for that experience, both for kids with disabilities and those kids who are not, to enjoy the same play area.
Okay. This is something that I'd like to see some back and forth discussion on with the other disability advocates that we were that I was speaking to. One of the things that I'm always trying to decide with a substantial hill, essentially within the typical playground for the accessible route, we're establishing a fairly level surface that you can turn in any direction and you don't pitch over. The one thing I'm always trying to work out, and we have not done a lot with sloped hills, is how to create a space that we can safely feel that a child won't in a wheelchair won't find themselves up here and then suddenly realize they're going down when they didn't intend to. I'm very much open to working out the best way to accommodate both those things. It's something that I don't have a clear picture of myself because we haven't done it a lot. So the question becomes, if you have a hilled area, there are two possibilities. One is that the top of the hill is only accessible by a heavily sloped area. So the child in a wheelchair who's down here is not going to find themselves at the top going down when they didn't mean to. The other way is if it is a sloped surface and there is a way up to it, if say you have an embankment slide, if you need guardrails or wayfinding systems in place to either prevent or at least warn the children that this way is steeper. So it's a discussion. I'd like to have. I'd like to understand it better myself.
I also see that in the equipment, it does not appear that there are any pieces of equipment that require cooperative play between kids who are non-disabled and disabled, or cooperative in any way, shape, or form, where if you have one kid, they can use the equipment, but if you have 3 or 4 or 6 kids, it does something different. And many of what's depicted here seems to be very similar to things we already have in our area, and not really things that are providing a little bit of risk, but a little bit of cooperation among the kids who are there. And so I would just encourage thinking about equipment, and maybe that's incorporating Mike Moller's idea of like a mini hand car that kids have to work together to move, or things that require that involvement of everybody, as opposed to what's depicted here is a lot of things that are side by side and not really things where kids can work together, so that you have older siblings, younger siblings, or just different segments of the community working together.
The piece that I try to invariably include, which is a cooperative play piece, is the merry-go-round, and this is a favorite piece of mine, because while it is actually possible for there are seats, there's space, there are basically booths that the child in a wheelchair can move into. This is to propel it. It's a group activity, and children of all activities absolutely love it. That after that, there are. I would agree that there are somewhat limited opportunities to cooperative play. If there are experiences that or equipment that you're familiar with, I'd like to hear about it. We can't do a moving. We could do various moving things. We can't do things that roll. So we can't do a car or a train. And the reason for that is pretty obvious if you think about a kid's foot being somewhere that a wheel comes across it. So there are options. But unfortunately, that's why you don't have any carts in here. That type of moving piece just isn't considered safe. It doesn't meet standards. So, but I would be very happy to hear ideas for other types of pieces that you've seen, and you know, I'm always on the lookout for that.
And the last question I have is, what's the anticipated capacity? Like, if this is full, how many kids, how many adults, or what are we thinking would be able to use this entirely?
Typically parks that we build, most of the parks we build are about half this size, and typically they will comfortably, depending on your perspective as to what's comfortable, they will accommodate 1 to 200 kids. I don't know if I've been asked how many parents specifically. Again, I can tell you right now that the current design has 28 benches in it. So an average of a full bench use would probably be about 3 parents per bench. So that's getting upwards of 175 to 100 parents. We could. There's a process by which we could go through and physically identify about how many children the different activities can accommodate. If there's one doing this and one doing this, and there's several here. I haven't done that yet, so I can't give you a number off the top of my head. But I would say that this is probably at 350 people. This is probably a pretty darn full, but busy, but plausible number playground. If you'd like to know, I'll go through and do the exercise of getting a sense of what that would be in terms of active play. You know, somebody doing this, kids here, about this number on each piece.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Tina, did you?
Yes. I, as well as Mia, I agree, as someone who grew up here in Marina my entire life, I don't see any representation of Marina in this park. I feel like I looked at it and I was like, wow, is this a Monterey? I do feel this represents Monterey and maybe Monterey Bay at its best, but I definitely would like to see better touches of Marina inside of here. and maybe it's a little bit harder because a lot of people here might not have grown up here. It was a military base. I would love to see a little bit of aspects of the former Fort Ord in here. Maybe not kind of real playhouses, but little maybe mini commissaries or something that used to be, or little something associated to our military presence that was so big here when growing up. And again, just the little touches like sand dunes. I mean, I believe sand dunes represent Marina, and I think that would make a great idea for, like you said, the kids, because they do love running up and down the hills and rolling off I mean, they do want to roll down things. Even my dog likes to roll down things. So I can see it being really cool if we had something similar to that as well.
Okay.
But other than that, again, I was thinking to the double gates as well because of the safety issues, because this,
Okay.
I've been to all your parks here. And this is going to be huge. And I'm just thinking of a parent getting from the beginning to the end to try to locate their kid that has now moved from one side to the other side. Yeah,
It's
the only
it's
thing.
a challenge. It's one of the things, honestly, about a park this size. And let me think about that further. The first thing that tried to do, and I'm not sure we've quite gotten there yet, is to use a rooms approach, and particularly to try to locate benches strategically throughout the playground. But obviously kids move through the playground, and it's a challenge. Let me think about what we can do about it. What honestly, and I'll take the heat for there are things that Ava and Vivian shared with me that I did my best with. As a built playground experience, and even within manufactured pieces, dunes are one of the trickier things for us to do, and I'm definitely open to trying to do what we can with that. But any further feedback in terms of, as with the commissary, what reflects your community? I was frankly concerned that this is more a Monterey themed piece. The thing that I would ask everyone to understand is there are limited amounts. I mean, we can put a port in place, hill in. It is not going to scream, this is a dune to you. It could.
Yeah.
You're right. The kids can enjoy rolling down it for sure. But I don't. It's a tricky thing to theme. I'd like to be able to do it if we can. So any further feedback is helpful as far as features.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Jay, did you want to go? I'll go last. Go ahead, Mia.
Yeah, so another comment, if you are thinking of compartmentalizing certain areas, to have enough room to walk through, because I was at the Tatum Park and at certain areas it was very tight, where it was hard to move from one area to another because literally just one person could fit through. So as you know, it's hard to kind of see on here what the dimensions are in person. That's just something to think about.
Okay. Can you tell me, can you remember some of the areas that you found that to be the case at Tatum's Garden? I'm trying to get a sense of scale. Right off the top of my head, I can only think of a couple of areas that it's obvious to me that would be the case. So I'm interested.
I would have to go back and look at the how it looks like to remember, but it was close to the area where we took pictures. Do you remember?
No, because I felt like I almost thought I might not even be able to fit. Sorry, I almost thought I myself could not even fit through there on my own, not even with the second person.
Yeah.
It was so tight.
Okay, that's
and that's important because when you're a parent running after a kid, you want to make sure you get to them quickly when you need to.
Right.
So that's something.
No, I understand that. If I look puzzled, it's because I'm trying to figure out where that is, because that's one of the things I try to do is avoid that. And I'm So,
And so the other thing that I enjoyed while I was at Tatum was, you know, the area you can take pictures. The music area was a lot of fun, I think. There
Mhm.
was popular. And one suggestion is have a rolling ball station where you can kind of release a ball and it rolls down, you know, kind of, I don't know what it's called. But as a kid, we used to play it like where you release a ball and it would roll down and then back and forth, things like that. So that would be, I think, fun for kids that are not comfortable doing the big structures. That keeps them entertained.
okay, there are a lot more a panel activity panel types of opportunities than there were 10 years ago, and that's something I want
Yep.
to look at. For we and actually we used to have a built system at which I think we put one in at Tatum's Garden, which we haven't done in a long time. I think it tended to jam. There are various types of enclosed systems like that. We couldn't do something with a loose ball. It would have to be you know, like in an enclosure. There are things like ball mazes and things like that.
Yeah, and then another thing is the animals represented in our area. I want to see coyotes,
Okay.
bunnies, butterflies, because we have plants here where only certain butterfly eat it and they come here. Snowy plovers. So
I
things like
can
that.
look it up, but can you tell me
Yeah,
a few
look
of the
up what
butterflies?
animals can be found in the Fort Ord Dunes area. There's a
Okay.
lot of protected plants. I would like to see some of those represented. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, so some of these are things that that come in as we develop it and as we work with the art committee. You're not seeing any at this stage. You're not seeing any decorative elements, but it does in terms of understanding how we're decorating it. This is useful feedback so that we're, you know, the structures support the types of art that, you know, or synergize with the types of art that you're looking for. I anticipate things like sort of a scavenger hunt where you're looking for particular animals or flowers, things like that. So that, but the content is good to know.
Thank you for the presentation. Some of the questions I had have already been asked, but regarding the capacity of the park, and given there's only one entry point, are there any safety concerns in terms of like evacuation areas or being able to get folks out quickly if there's only one entry point? And I'm guessing the other entry point was where the picnic area would be next to the wheelchair swing. Is that another entry point as well? Or is it all in the front?
That's it. I'll have to look into that. That's not a question that I've gotten before in terms of evacuation. I'm not aware of our ever having a problem with that, but yes, you're right. You have a pinch point. We can open up the gated area. The gated area once you're in the exterior pavilion is quite wide. And the trade-off there again is narrower is easier to corral kids. Wider is would be safer for a large scale evacuation. As planned now, the picnic area and the area from the merry-go-round up to the past the music area to the tot, that's all low perimeter. You could get out there, assuming that then I would recommend fencing the grassy area so that it's still one way in, one way out. That wouldn't get you out of the area in general. What types of this is a grim question in terms of an evacuation, and what would you anticipate that people were evacuating from? Is it like a fire alarm sort of situation where people are could remove themselves to the grassy lawn, or do they need to get completely out of the park?
I think it'd be all above, right? I'm not really sure, and I hope that we never have to experience that. But I'm just if the fence was a little higher, which I agree, I got a little one myself, and so like having a place where I know they're going to be secure and safe is really important. But also thinking about like if there's a situation where folks do need to get out quickly, that we anticipate that, especially if there's one entry point. But I think it makes sense in terms of being able to get folks in and being able to keep our kids in one spot. But just the worst case scenario, something was to happen, and I would never wish that, but just in the likely chance that we do consider what that might look like, and if there was some type of evacuation area, where would that be? And again,
Well,
know, if
so,
it's-
some of the question with that, I mean, it would, if we're talking about certain gated areas, and one thing that would want to think about is maintenance considerations. If there are areas you're going to want, for example, one reason you would want a gate in, if the grassy area is getting mowed, you're going to need a way to get a mower in there. I guess that's a tough one. The question becomes, if everyone needs to get, and I've never thought about this before, I'm talking out loud here. If multiple points of entry, if you have gates in the fence around the grassy area and people exit that way and then disperse, that would work okay. If what they need to do is get back to their cars, then you've got a focused one way or another. You've got a focused evacuation, and you're going to, I mean, obviously if everyone's parked in the west lot, the walkways become focused. In general, I think that the answer is that this is not like, say, a large scale concert or something where you have 2 or 5 or 10,000 people. In general, if you've got, say, 350 people in the playground at a busy time, you probably aren't going to have, you're not going to have the issue that you would have with a much larger crowd. So we'll have to discuss that. I don't have a good answer for that one.
all good. And then you kind of mentioned this about the maintenance of it, and I'm not sure if that's the conversation we have now, but like for something this size and this scale, what does the maintenance look like? Especially if you have similar or like parks that y'all have worked on in the past, like what does that end up looking like for something like this?
In terms of the environment or the equipment,
Oh, the environment, the equipment, the cleaning of it, things are interconnected. So like if one piece is broken, then how does that impact the other areas to be able to be open and accessible for folks to utilize?
There's typically the bulk of what we have in is pretty darn durable. That's one of the hallmarks of our playground. However, things do break. Slides and moving things periodically break. Generally speaking, something can be taken out of service if you lose a slide. Basically, the procedure, we all get trained as SIPCs. The procedure is to close it off and then remove it if it's climbable until it's been replaced. That happens occasionally. I'm not in charge of that, so I don't know exactly what the numbers are. The physical ramp structures are very durable, and occasionally, I mean, really determined attempted vandalism is a possibility. Generally speaking, we do provide a maintenance guide and would give you instructions for how to take a piece temporarily out of service. In terms of cleaning, the biggest issue is debris coming in. And the best thing, I know you have some important legacy trees adjacent. I don't know how they are. The biggest issue comes if you've got overhanging trees, particularly that are certain varieties that I mean, you wouldn't want a mulberry, for example, that drop a lot of debris. And in that case, again, I haven't dealt with this as a designer too much. Most of the time, occasionally we've had projects where we designed it so that it was easy to bring in leaf blowers. But I think, and I may be speaking out of turn here, there are not a lot of I don't anticipate a lot of serious cleaning issues here, though I would like to get an understanding of how the moisture affects you. So I don't have a real good issue for that other than sweeping or blowing out if debris gets in. The structures are tended to not to trap debris, but sometimes things will get along the fence line, and mostly sweeping or blowing.
But with respect to overall maintenance, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, there is very little maintenance that's required with the actual structure because of the type of materials that are used. Most of the maintenance will occur in parts that are moving.
Yes.
Particularly as you, like we are, in a salty environment. So that's where most of the maintenance will take place. But as far as the structure itself, as Jim said, an occasional cleaning is about all you really need to do.
So swing the wear parts will be things like swing hangers, periodically things that the kids put their feet on. The climbing nets will occasionally need to be replaced. Those are really easy swap out, and not expensive. The built structures are very durable, and I'm looking for anything else. Again, the slides occasionally will generally through misuse or occasionally vandalism will occasionally need something. The tube slide, you will ultimately occasionally be replacing the exit chute because it will. Although I think they're building them better than they used to, but the old ones, you would eventually develop a crack on the tube slide. And I'm looking for anything else. A few things that have bearings. Eventually, you'll have to do some maintenance on the merry-go-round, but that doesn't come very often. It is pretty low. It is pretty low maintenance.
Cool. And then the last thing was you mentioned restrooms, but I'm guessing like a place for folks to fill up water bottles and all that stuff will be somewhere where the restrooms are located.
Thank you. I don't have that in there. The one recommendation I did make was that we don't have any water or electrical demands in this at present, but that it is advisable for what I would typically do is at least have a drinking fountain / water bottle filling station right near the entrance. It is possible to put more than one in. In terms of cleaning and maintenance, actually, this is one thing to be aware of. We generally encourage people not to bring food in. This is one downside to having a picnic area, although you can try to use signage. You can try to encourage people to keep the food in the picnic area. When we do things like Tatum's Garden, this is why they have the picnic area outside the playground. But what will happen in terms of cleaning is when people bring their Slurpee in and spill it on something. That's why we encourage not bringing food in. Water does not have that problem. However, you can spill quite a bit of water on the playground. It'll just dry.
Yeah. Cool. And then I guess when we are thinking about like the water fountains and places to refill water bottles, that they're accessible. Since we're thinking about making this an inclusive space, so folks in whichever way they can get access to those things.
There's a particular model. If you're down, the model that we typically recommend, and I'm blanking on the manufacturer. They have several of them down at least. Yeah, I'm quite sure they installed them down at Tatum's Treehouse. And if you happen to be down there, you can take a look at them and see if that feels like it meets your needs. But I think they're nice units. One of them has a dog dish filler that's optional. But that one we put outside the playground because dog toenails are not really safety surfacing friendly.
Thank you for the presentation and sharing the drawings with us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Well, like Vivian said, this is a first pass, and obviously I punted on more than a few things. So this is not the final word by any means. We tend to design in CAD instead of with a pencil and paper now, so it looks very official. And I do know how it will function in terms of the slope and things like that, but that does not mean that this is what you're getting. And obviously, based on a bunch of the feedback I got, this is not exactly what you're getting.
Great. Okay, so I'm last, and I just have a couple things that are more future thought problems. The wayfaring station having park rules as well. You commented about the food, maybe no food in that area, but food over at the picnic tables. The fence height on the bottom. My escape artist is notorious for rolling under the fence as well as climbing over it. A slippery,
They can't roll under our fence.
Yeah.
Our fence goes all the way down.
that's fantastic. And then the comment about adding shade, I don't know that we necessarily need shade added because we are a foggy place, but making sure that the equipment is something that you're not going to slip and slide on when it gets wet. So like when you're running across your ramps and things, that
Okay,
it's
let me discuss.
safe in that sense.
There are
And then-
there are a few options there. Let me make a note on that.
And then I think you really have plenty of things to climb and play on. So I'm not sure about the hill thing, but that's just my point of view. It doesn't mean that you have to discount the other one. And I just wanted to, at the end, thank all of you for being here and giving this presentation. Nice seeing you again, Vivian. And yeah, and I think this is a really great first draft. And I think you have plenty of ideas to make any tweaks to move on to the next part. And did you want to say anything, Drea?
If you'd like, I can send like a recap of this meeting, Jim, with all of the
Okay.
recommendations from the steering committee and from the commissioners.
I've taken notes, but belts and braces would be good. And and this is also at this stage of the game. I know we'll be talking to the mayor next week, but at this stage of the game, we're still holding and collecting more feedback from you. So we're not. So we'll be talking about what we're doing with this, and you can continue to talk. And I think, Bo, when you'd worked out an approximate time that we're conducting feedback in. So we'll go back and forth on that. If there's other discussions that we need to have, we can do that.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate the presentation.
Sure. Thanks
Moving
for having
on.
us.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you.
All right. Next thing on the agenda is commission comments and reports. Does any commissioner have any comments outside of the scope of? Nope. Okay. Go ahead.
And I don't know if it's here that we talk about it too, but when we do think about like the naming convention of things and even the signage, remind me, like, are we thinking about making signage bilingual and having them in different languages? So it is more accessible in that way
Write
too.
that down too, Drea.
I'm sorry?
Can you write that down too? Making
Yes.
sure we have bilingual.
Absolutely. Bilingual
That word option.
spaces and
Also, American
Sorry,
Sign
just one-
Language.
American Sign Language. Yes.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to follow up on the theme of the park that is very ocean and Monterey Bay, but for our kids, that is their life every day. We're right by the ocean. And so I guess I would encourage creativity to think about this park as a transformational experience so that when you're in this park, it's a unique experience. When I see the whale here, Olson has a whale in the back of their school. PG Natural History Museum has a whale in the front. Like our kids have already done that. And I guess I would encourage creativity around the theme. And maybe it's something to reflect Marina. Maybe it's something that is separate from that, but that is just a very different kind of experience. And so I would put that out there, not to get too tied to the oceanic theme in our local area. For outsiders, they may enjoy that, but not for Marina residents. That's what we do all the time.
Okay.
So
Well-
to think about creative other themes that could be built in there.
Well, this is a balancing act that I'm always looking at. The kids, for example, mentioned castles, and what I thought I was hearing in discussions with adults was that they were looking for themes that were that had local or natural resonance. We can absolutely put imaginative elements in that that are not about Marina or the area. As you point out, the kids spend their time here, but they don't necessarily spend their time in I don't know, a castle in Switzerland. So some of that is just getting a sense from the client group how you want that to balance out. We could do all of one, we can do all of other, we could do a mix.
I can
My
also
main job is to
ask,
make both the adults and the kids happy. So
I can also ask the art chair and co-chair for more feedback on that creativity to implement.
that would be
into the
great. Tatum's Garden was one of the first projects I worked on, and I would like, and it's a very popular playground, and I'd like to take all the credit for it. But honestly, the work the local artists did on that is what makes it special. And that is something, whatever the physical structure is, whatever the play elements are, getting that sense of an environment of imaginative art. That's really what we specialize in, and like to work with communities on. So.
All right.
Great.
I'd like to thank everybody for attending this meeting. Our next commission meeting for Recreation and Cultural Services is July 2nd. If there are no objections, we will adjourn this meeting. I don't hear any objections. This meeting is now adjourned at 8:01.
Thank you.